All right, now our next discussion is going to be on breaking down at least what is coming in from the energy sector in Uganda. Now, just currently, as we speak, most fuel stations are having diesel higher than petrol, shooting as high as 5,900 and 8,990. Then others are having it 5,980. There are few case scenarios where fuel is shooting to 6,000 in some regions, but most of the fuel stations are having it averagely at around 5,800, both diesel and petrol. So it is on that particular point that we would go deeper in understanding the situation. Where are we heading to now? Because this is a crisis that has actually left many Ugandans with less hope of fuel ever going down again.
Well, the crisis is global. This is nothing new. This is not new information.
Okay.
We've been in this struggle since about January of this year. The prices of refined petroleum products has been on a rise internationally since the beginning of this year. Primarily, it was because of the opening of the economies after COVID. The demand shot beyond what the refiners and the people who get crude out of the ground could match. And before we could sort that out, before the drilling and refining activities could be stepped up,
okay,
we got a shock of Russia, invasion of Ukraine, and the sanctions that followed, because Russia puts in the market 29% of the fuel consumed globally. Okay. It's a major oil producer, but the sanctions affected it because most of the countries around Russia said we are not going to buy fuel from Russia.
Okay.
Then the big global companies that were operating in Russia, like Shell and Exxon, exited. They left the market. So while Russia could still be having oil, there are sanctions. The big companies left. They are not trading in their product.
Oh.
So the supply chain was disrupted significantly. And the other, oil-producing countries have not increased production. America has tried to, to say, let's put more crude into the market. But just last week, I saw the president of the U.S., Joe Biden, writing to the fuel companies and asking them why they've not stepped up their volumes. So he's also baffled. He's almost the president of the world, but he feels, America is feeling it. Germany is feeling it. Germany has just announced that it's going to, to revive coal, coal production because it was depending on much of the fuel from Russia. Now it's not there. So they are going to revive coal, use of coal, which was a bit put on the side in the interest of using cleaner energy. So right now it's not sustainable to keep it on the side. So we are really, as a country, our first priority has been to ensure that we don't run out of supply. Because it's one thing to have high prices, but
and then the other not to
things
have
can get worse.
And you have less
when you don't have.
Okay.
Or when you have.
But the worry is for many Ugandans is that this war looks like it's also not ending yet or ending soon. Does it mean if at all it continues in the next 5-10 years, then we are expecting to have the same crisis as we was.
It is actually, things are actually getting out of hand globally because you can, discussions of are we in a recession have started. Right now, it has extended to banks. Now it is expensive to get a loan.
From a bank.
It's very expensive to buy a car. It's expensive to buy property because people are now using what they have to get what they don't have. Because if fuel shoots up, it affects much of the businesses because transportation
costs of production become higher as well from industries.
Yes, freight costs are higher, everything. So people are increasing commodity prices so that they can match.
To at least address something to do with at least minimizing these fuel prices. For example, every other day that passes by, you will at least see a cent increasing, either a 10 shilling or 5 shillings increasing on the fuel, and people are getting worried.
You see, we are in a free market economy. That's our law. It has been with us since 2012, and it has been working. Prices are determined by the market. So forces of demand and supply affect the palm price. Our oil marketing companies have not abused it. Much as they have the liberty to determine the prices, we as government have continued to license more players into the market. So the only point of competition is the price among the sources. It's a lot of money that even if you subsidize by just 100 shillings, it's a lot of money you pay. It's in billions per month. And as a country, we don't have that money. You heard from the budget when the Minister of Finance was reading the budget. We cannot even fully finance our own budget as a country. We need to borrow more than 50% or about 50% to finance our own budget. So when you're borrowing,
actually going
and
to
then you subsidize,
you're going to borrow 9 trillion.
Yes, you can't really match up.
Okay.
You don't have the resources to subsidize. So what we are saying to Ugandans, let's endure for now. Let's try to to use the little we have. Avoid unnecessary travels. If you don't have to go somewhere, please.
If you're to predict at least a duration, for how long should we expect this to continue?
To be sincere with you, we cannot determine how long this. Not even the America is able to say maybe
that by the end of this year.
It is still hard. We can only talk about that when the war ends in Ukraine, because the bigger players are that side.
All right.
Yeah.
Now let's turn our eyes off the fuel prices and mention something, and at least discuss something to do with energy in regards to electricity. You mentioned that Uganda is now looking at options of expanding electrification to the DRC, expanding to Rwanda, now South Sudan.
Yes.
So on the issue of electricity, back then I think on the show still you did mention something to do, when we were breaking down the 2021 review, you mentioned something to do with electricity infrastructure vandalism. How far with fighting that crime, with fighting that vice, have you gone lately?
That vice is still with us, but over the past few months, it scaled down a bit. We are lucky, but also we've invested a bit of time and money in intelligence, security, along the major lines we have. People have been cutting down the transmission lines mainly. These are very expensive equipment. Putting down a tower you know, just one tower, when it goes down, you lose in the excess of 300 million.
Okay.
Just one. And sometimes we've had these vandals, 5 at a go, 11, and so on. They roll these cables and take them somewhere, God knows where they take them. And this slows us down, you know, because when you put up, first of all, getting the resources to put up this infrastructure, you know, it's not easy to get the financing for these things. So when you get it and then they put it away, it takes you backwards.
Yes.
We are hoping that we can take this vice can stop. They vandalize transformers. They take out the oil. I don't know what they use it for. And when they take it out, these transformers burn, and this poses a danger.
Blackouts, and
it causes those blackouts, but also poses it's a danger to the communities around those. You know, some of these facilities are in the busy trading centers,
okay,
in you know, residential areas. So we have been appealing to the communities to work with us, give us the information. When you suspect, when you see something happening, don't just look on. I mean, government gets money. Like now we are going to be expanding the network of electricity to the villages to get more people connected. If a line is put up in your area and then you find someone now removing the cables, please report. You can report to police, you can call the ministry, but at least report in time so that these people, when we apprehend some of these people, they tell us where they take these things. At least we need to know who exactly is sponsoring this sort of activity. It is so destructive. It is against the government. It's against the interests of the people. It is so bad for something like this to happen. It's against development because where we get investors who need power in different parts of the country, and then the government takes their power.
Okay.
Then the vandals come and remove the line.
And lastly, Mr. Muita, how much do we export in terms of power?
Well, power, we export. First of all, we utilize, right now we have 1,000, we have about in the excess of 1,300 megawatts.
Okay.
We are able to use at peak, we are able to use 700 megawatts. So the rest we export. So we export about 50-50. We utilize about 50, we export about 50%, okay, at peak.
Okay.
But there are times when we can export more because Ugandans are not using. So our first priority is to ensure that whenever Ugandans need power, they get it in full.
Okay.
Then we export the excess.
All right.
Yeah. There is no point where we are going to say, Ugandans, let's switch you off because Rwanda needs it or Congo needs it. We only take what is excess.
Okay.
Yeah. And, but at peak, we export about 50% of what we have.
And there also claims that it is a bit cheaper exporting than in here.
Yeah, because when you export, you're only putting up a transmission line.
Okay.
But when you're distributing locally, you need to put so many distribution lines and so many transformers and so on. So when you're taking it to Congo, you're only doing what we call the equivalent of a road.
Okay, direct to Congo.
You're doing a road. Now the issues of distribution, you know, you need to buy so many meters, so many connections, solidors, so many distribution lines, so many poles, so many what. So that is the business of the person buying the power in bulk.
Okay.
But but that doesn't mean that government is going to stop the distribution business, because first priority is a Ugandan who can afford power. So people have been applying, people have been writing to the minister, asking for power, people have projects here and there. That's why we have the rural electrification project under the ministry. As we export the excess, rural electrification project is expanding the networks. We have Uganda Electricity Distribution Company is also expanding the networks, and Umeme. So, and a few other companies that are in the distribution business. So we are not taking our eyes off the distribution locally. We want to ensure that 30% of the households are connected by the end of the next financial year. And we want, our target is to get the entire country connected by 2030.
All right.
That is the target for the government and for my ministry.
Okay, now in a minute, Mr. Solomon Mwita, your final remarks as we're parting out with the discussion.
Yes, we thank Ugandans for moving with us. There are lots of opportunities coming up. Also in the mineral sector, we didn't talk about the mineral sector. Uganda is going to set up a Uganda mining company to hold the shares of the government in each of these bigger projects. We have gold. The president talked about gold in the country. We have so many other minerals, and Ugandans should follow us on our website, listen to us. There are lots of opportunities. You can also invest as a Ugandan. You can get a mining license and you can make some money. Also, energy. There are lots of things, renewable energy. You can come get information about, say, importing solar panels. There are business opportunities. We want to promote much of also the renewable energy. And we want our people to benefit from some of these, these things coming up.
All right. Yeah. And that's it for our discussion today with Solomon Mwita from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. We've been discussing with our first segment, we discussed the oil and gas sector. We broke down a little more of the developments that are happening with the oil and gas in Uganda. Then we talked more about the fuel crisis in Uganda, and also something to do with the mineral development that he has lastly highlighted, and electricity in Uganda. With that, I do take a break. When I return, I will be back with sports business. Stick around.